Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why protein timing just isn't that important in the grand scheme of things for the overwhelming majority of lifters. And I'm not saying that protein timing doesn't matter. I want to make that clear because when someone makes a statement like this and they try to discuss that something has been extremely overhyped, people over obsess over it, they want to take the other extreme and they think that you're saying that you can do just whatever you want. In other words, when I say that, someone will say, oh, so you're saying that I can just consume all of my protein from some single protein source like whey that's fast absorbing and just take 180 grams of protein in one day and not eat any more protein the rest of the day and I'll get perfect muscle growth. No, it's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is if you're eating varied protein sources and you consume two, three, or four pretty large servings of protein a day and then have the rest of your food somewhat spread out, but most of your protein in those number of meals, you're probably not going to get any significant difference in hypertrophy. And the problem is that a lot of the stuff that we look at is extremely theoretical. Almost all of the studies even that look at, oh, how much protein can you get whatever anabolic drive from, what's the cap from a single feeding, what's going on with this and that, these are almost always done on fasted individuals. And you're not fasted for your second or third or fourth meal in the day, you're only fasted for your first meal, and they're almost always looking at relatively fast absorbing proteins. Okay, that's what they're looking at. So it's something like whey or whey with amino acids, and again, even some of the stuff with the leucine studies. And the problem is that people will then obsess over this, right? And they'll start looking at, oh, I need to figure out exactly protein timing. I have to now get this anabolic window post workout. I have to look at the exact amount of leucine content of an individual meal. And I actually had a client who was doing that for one of my clients I had for a while, who was finishing up his undergrad, his final year for nutritional science, and he would actually obsess over this. Getting his exact amount of leucine. I have a minimum leucine threshold I have to hit with each meal, or it's just a complete waste. Without him even thinking about the fact that all of those studies looking at that were done in fasted individuals. Right? It doesn't matter that much. And it's the same thing when people start doing crazy things like saying, oh, well, how much can I absorb in a single meal? Right? There's no point in sitting around worrying about that. Do you know what? If you're eating varied protein sources and you're consuming slower protein absorbing sources, such as meat, milk, whatever, any of those, even there's going to be a lot of your protein is going to be plant-based from your own high calories. You're going to be getting a lot of protein from your grains and things. Now, am I saying that those are perfect and by themselves? No, but in a mixed environment, it's fine. In other words, let's say you do something like what I've been doing. Like, let's say you do steak and rice, bison and rice, whatever, and a third of your protein every day comes from rice protein, right? That's fine in a varied diet. It's fine because the larger share of it's coming from your red meat, for example, from your steak. We're eating multiple protein sources. We're getting significant amount of protein from different sources. If you're getting 100 grams of protein or 120 grams of protein a day from your meat, and then you end up getting 50 or 60 from your carb sources, right? That's a varied protein diet. We have a few different proteins in the mix. Couple different at least, right? At which point some of it matters less, and those are all slower absorbing. Does it really matter? Does it really matter if you space out your 120 grams of protein from your bison or your steak or chicken or whatever, if you space it into 2 meals and you eat 60 in the morning and 60 in the evening? Does anyone realistically think that isn't going to work just fine? especially considering you're having other foods in between. But let's say that all of your big animal protein sources only comes from 2 meals spaced out, and everything else in between is various plants or whatever. But you're still hitting your minimum number. And what is our minimum number? Generally, we're shooting for optimal muscle growth about 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. It means a guy like me needs at least 160 grams of protein. So in my case, let's say I get 120 from bison. Let's say I get 50 to 60 from my rice, then a little bit from, my creatine and collagen supplements and whatever. Because those people say, well, those aren't really great proteins. No, they're not. But mixed into the whole matrix of things, they still count. But even without those, let's say I'm at 170, 180 grams from the beef and the rice. Right, that's fine. Okay, because when we look at those numbers, we're assuming it's varied mixed sources. Now, we're not assuming it's not coming just from some vegan sources or something, but a good chunk of it from plant is fine. This is still what the research shows produces maximum muscle growth. So if your two really slow absorbing meats are only spaced into 2 big meals, does it matter? Do you really think that if you spaced it into 3 or 4 that you're going to see an extra pound of muscle growth every year? I doubt it. There's no research confirming that occurs even in serious athletes and lifters. Not at all. It's just hypothetical. Same thing, people will say stuff, oh, we need to be basing our protein needs off of lean body mass instead of just body weight. Really? Why? Do any of you guys even know your lean body mass? I mean, people will obsess over this stuff. They will obsess over it without even realizing that they're not getting a DEXA scan every 3 months. If you're not getting a DEXA scan, and that is more or less your gold standard, if you're not getting a DEXA scan, you don't know your exact body fat percentage. And if you don't know your body fat percentage, you don't know your lean mass percentage. How do you really know unless you're actually getting it checked with good equipment, a $50,000 machine? How do you know that you're actually 12% body fat and not 17, or vice versa? Like, well, I trust my eye. You trust your eye better than the machine that measures it? Well, what's your standard? Everyone who you've looked at and determined what you think their body fat is, how many of them have you seen their DEXA scan results for? So where are you coming up with your numbers if you use your eye to determine? Based on what? Based on what metric? What you perceive and you think 20% or 10% or 15% looks like? Maybe you don't really have a clue. Maybe you have no objective data at all other than your opinion. And now you're trying to do math off of your opinion. Come on. Seriously? But at that point, you're just engaging in silly mental masturbation because you're going to do exact math. I need to get this exact amount of protein based on my lean body tissue, but you have a subjective, immeasurable way of measuring lean body tissue. Well, you might as well just pick a random number then. Body weight works just fine. All the studies look at body weight. They look at body weight because it's too expensive to get DEXA scan in every one of these studies on all the people. So realistically, it's just silly. Just base it on body weight. And the same thing we start talking about timing. You know what? People who eat a little more protein, it doesn't even matter on timing because all these proteins we're eating, let's say you're eating a steak or 2 steaks or whatever, you do understand that you haven't digested that and absorbed it in 4 or 5 hours, right? You do understand that you're still absorbing protein and amino acids from a steak you eat 24 hours after you eat it. Hopefully people understand that. You get a lot of it on the first few hours, but there's a trickle-down effect. So if that's the point and you're worried about needing a certain amount spread over, if for some reason it was less efficient to do only 2 servings or 1 serving or whatever it is you're doing, if you just ate more protein, that probably wouldn't even matter. And as much as I might think like the 1 protein serving a day is kind of stupid, it's silly, it's pointless to actually do that. There's no benefit and it's just creating discomfort for yourself and potential negatives in muscle protein synthesis. If you just ate more protein, it probably still wouldn't matter. Do you know why? Because you're still slowly absorbing it, and the more you eat, the longer it will take you to absorb all of it. In other words, what I'm saying is total protein intake and eating a varied protein diet is probably considerably more important than your timing. Hey, that's considerably more important. It will actually bridge the gap of problems in your timing for the most part. In other words, people worry about something that doesn't matter instead of worrying about the things that do matter, like training correctly. And then they wonder why they're still small and weak, and they say, "Oh, your strength standards, what you say guys should be able to get to, is irrational. It's unrealistic." Well, really? Maybe because you're obsessed over lutein content and training like a pussy, and that's why it seems hard to do instead of actually just training hard and eating. Anyone consider that maybe that's why? All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.